We're usually hiring people that I need this done. I'm gonna go hire them. But what happens is that project gets done and then we realize, oh, they just did that project well. We never aligned philosophically. We never aligned practically, and we never aligned procedurally. That is why when we're onboarding someone, we should align in those three areas, not assign a project, which is the first trap of onboarding somebody new.
That sounds like a lot of work. Welcome to ReedFlections, a podcast on life, leadership, and learning. I am Art Calderon. I'm here with Reed Nyffeler, a CEO of a growing global franchising security firm headquartered here in the heartland of America. Reed's also a father, a husband, an author, and, of course, a podcaster. Quick recap, folks. Episodes 1 through 4. So far, we talked about why develop leaders. We moved on to who you should develop. And now, finally, what capacities do leaders need? Episodes 10 through 14, we're in the middle of that right now. Visioning, strategic planning, financial acumen, team development, and project management. And today, we're talking about team development. Reed, teams. You've been leading teams for a while now. Let's start with some positivity this morning and share a success story that you have seen in a team that you led.
Well, I am positive it's difficult to lead teams. So that's if you want some positivity, I'm positive about that. And I think some of that is, really how do we assemble the team? I think that's the starting point, right? And so I think naturally, we as leaders, as entrepreneurs, we want to assemble the team with like-minded people and people that like us. And so we're really leaning heavily into those two things. And so like-minded people or people that like us are usually family or friends. And that's because we want our ideas affirmed. We're kind of at that beginning stage of like, I want to put this together, so I want people to affirm me, but not develop them to achieve the objective, right? Teams are developed or built or should be assembled to achieve an objective. That's why team development's fourth. Many people start with a team saying, hey, I need to bring a team together that affirms my idea or my vision, right? I remember starting this organization and I thought, okay, these people like my vision. I don't have really a strategic plan. I had one initially at least, but it wasn't really galvanized. But these people like my vision. So I'm going to bring them around me so I get affirmation and information. I think it's a trap of a leader. But team development's fourth. So the way we should build it is first, clarify vision. Second, have a strategic plan in place. Third, look at the financial acumen. Fourth, identify what in association with the vision, in alignment with a strategic plan, in affordability of the financial acumen, are resources, personnel, team members that I need to achieve that, right? And so let's use an analogy of a sports team, right? They don't just say, hey, who do we got around here, right? If you're playing in the backyard, let's do the two extremes. Who are you recruiting for your football team? Your friends,
all your buddies,
right? All my neighbors and friends by proximity. These are people here. Many organizations are built that way. This is a guy I've known a long time. This is a family member. This is a friend. You be the quarterback. You be the wide receiver. And they're raising their hand because they want to do that. Not because they're good at that. That's kind of the backyard team assembly. But if you look at championship teams, right, they have a clear coach that has a vision for a win, right? And then they say, here's the offense we're going to run, right? Strategic plan. Then we say, okay, here's how much for now in the NIL, name, image, likeness era. Here's how much our quarterback should cost us, right? They're kind of distributing their finances accordingly. Then they say, who can we afford for that role to get the achievement we want? Then you're selecting people with a clear definition of what you're trying to achieve. That's why it's fourth.
It takes the emotion out of it, doesn't it?
It does. And I think that's the problem, right? We'll make an emotional decision around team assembly because we're like, well, I don't want to disappoint my friend and not give them the job they're asking for, right? My friends raise their hand. They want to be the backyard quarterback. We keep losing, but he's my buddy. I can't not select him when I'm picking a team, right? We've all been around there in junior high and we have to pick a team, and majority of the times they're assembled by their friends. And you may lose with your friends, but they're your friends at least, right? But that's not a winning combination. And I think we pick organizations and or teams the same way as an organization. So it's selection. And it needs to be fourth. So then how do you get success, right? And it is built upon those first three stages. If you are consistently leading a team that's not successful, look at the previous steps. Did you go through a vision? Did you clarify a strategic plan? And did you apply financial acumen and appropriately resource the organization? So, and I'll say this also, because this is so critical for us to understand as leaders, that someone says, well, this is what I'm worth. Right? This is what I should be compensated and paid for. Well, what one organization values doesn't necessarily translate to what your organization values, right? So if I'm in an accounting firm, for example, just because that's an example of that, and the accounting firm values it at this, well, do I need a bookkeeper or do I need a full-fledged CPA for my organization? And if I'm getting somebody that I trust because they're managing my finances, but I only have, say 10 transactions a month because I'm a small business owner, do I really need to pay somebody? I can't afford what you're worth because my organization isn't there. That's financial acumen, is saying, you know what, you're worth that. I'm not saying you're not worth it. I'm just saying my organization doesn't get the returns of
You're not worth it here.
That's right. The comprehensive value of your income is not, I don't have the volume of transactions an accounting firm has. You're doing 50 financial statements a month. I have one. Right. And so it's not the same correlation, even though they may be worth that. And so we may, as leaders, disproportionately invest in that individual because they are talented and they provide value, but not to the scale that's here. That's why financial acumen precedes team development. We're overpaying for a position that ultimately doesn't provide value at the stage we're in to the degree that person should be compensated for. So it's assembling the team. And then once you understand that a leader and you're disciplined to follow through, that's the other thing. This is the first one that's animate, right? I mean, a vision, we can control that in our own minds. A strategic plan, some people do that and it's somewhat not as fluid or flexible. The finances are pretty consistent. You can see this is animate. You're dealing with different people and personalities. That's why it's difficult. And I think that's the thing with team development. Now we're getting direct feedback from an individual that's got their own mind, whereas the other pieces don't. And that makes team development difficult. So we have to be really adept at handling those dynamics and relationships. And so ultimately your question is, how do we, put that team success together? They're all aligned, they're clear, and we stick towards the plan. We don't deviate based on emotion at this stage. We've spent the first 3 steps to build a vision, a strategic plan, put finances behind it all, and now it goes, live to the audience, and we don't change the script. I see that happen all the time with teams that fail, and the teams that are successful, they stick with the script, and people came for the vision. They align with the strategic plan. They agree to the financial acumen and value and worth, and then we reinforce that. And that's actually where our credibility comes in the fact that we reinforce that.
So if I'm a leader, I'm leading a team, and I want to develop them, right? I don't want them to just stay stagnant and just stay where they are. What are some things that I have to keep in mind as I build my capacity to develop a team?
So first and foremost, I think the first thing we're going to look at is the things they aren't doing well.
Okay.
What happens is, as a leader, we're going to say, well, you didn't do this well. So let's give a good example. If you may not have picked up on this, I'm not the sympathetic one in my family.
Not a lot of empathy going on.
So, my wife's like, you need to be more sympathetic. That is a weakness of mine, right? And so ultimately, if I spend all my time disproportionately getting this much more sympathetic, right? If there's a sympathy scale and it's 1 to 100, and 100 being high, is there a negative number? Can you have 0? Because that's not where I'm at. So if I even go to 3 or 4 or 5, I can assure you, even if I appreciate that growth from 3 to 5%, I'm still not getting a lot of people coming to me for sympathy because I'm not at the top end of the scale. And I may have spent hours trying to, someone argue with me as to why I need to be sympathetic, which I'm not. And I'll win that argument because that's one area I'm strong in, right? So ultimately, what should we do as a team leader is saying, what are their strengths? Instead of saying, what are your weaknesses? And I'm going to give you training around your weaknesses. I need to look at the other side of it saying, what are your strengths? So one of my, strengths is, I'm very witty. So that's what they should come to me for. They need to laugh. And humble too. So, hey, if you need your spirits picked up, I'm not going to hug you. I'm going to make fun of you and you'll laugh, right? I mean, that I don't need training around that. I've worked on it my entire life. So they should bring things to me and then I'll quickly and easily make fun of them and lift their spirits.
I've seen that in action.
You
it's
have
very
Art,
effective.
and I practice with you. That's team development. You're developing me by some of the things you say and do. You're developing me. Thank you. And so back to the team development, we should look at the strengths those particular individuals have, and as a leader, put them in their greatest area of strengths. And something super practical for the individuals that may be listening is, as a leader, one of the things we definitely want to do is make sure that they're allocating their time to areas of success, right? So I do time audits, right? So that's saying, okay, 80% of the time's there. So let's be super practical. In an 8-hour day, right, 6 of those hours should be areas of their strength, right? That they're saying, hey, you're really strong at this. This is what you should be doing. And then the second thing is 4 out of the 5 days a week. There may be a day we're working on things we're not strong on. So I'll even break that down as a business. As a business leader, we're hiring ourselves. And so again, if I look at my strengths, probably my career strength is probably on the sales side. So I knew early on I should spend my time on sales if I can. And so anything breaking that away from me. So the first thing, and administration and details are not things that I invest my time heavily on, right? And so then if I have that, that's the first person I should hire, right? Is saying, okay, I need someone's strength that's around administration or details or finances, because that's just, I'm not going to go fill a ledger in everything. That's just not a good use of my time. So then if we're a leader, we want to hire to our weaknesses, right? And again, that's going back to the full circle on the trap. We wouldn't want to hire people that affirm us or like-minded. No, in this case, we want to hire people that fill in our weaknesses. So it takes humility to say, what am I weak at?
Right.
So one of the first people I hired probably had sensitivity. We didn't need another witty person. We had that completely covered. I needed someone sensitive that would listen to them and be empathetic through that whole process, because that's a weakness of mine or a gap in the organization. We hire toward our weaknesses, not to our strengths. And I always say this. Everybody's like, wow, you've got a lot of employees. I said, every day I have a new weakness. And if I'm looking to identify where that's at, I just ask one of my team members and they say, we need another person. And I know what they're saying. Reed, you're really weak here. We need to fill this gap here. And so that's inherently what we want to do. Instead of defending that and denying it, we should then resource those weaknesses organizationally. So
Now, some people start a business or start an, they immediately say, man, I got to hire some people. I'm a boss, so I need to have someone to be a boss over. And that's sort of a temptation, right? Go in there and invest in a team. But you're saying that should not be the first thing you do. You're saying it's like the third or fourth thing. Talk about that order.
And really psychologically, there's 4 areas we can be in life, right? And this is the feeling of those 4 areas. The worst one is right, wrong, and alone. We don't want to be wrong and alone, right? The second worst one is right and alone. So the third one is wrong in a group. So the third worst one, or the second best one we feel is wrong in a group. And then the best one, of course, is right in a group. So we're saying I'm alone, right? Because I know that being alone is not, I don't like that. So I don't know what I need to do, but I need people to affirm me. So I'll be wrong in a group and so we hire the wrong people at the wrong time for the wrong job, but we feel better because now we have a team, right? We didn't give them direction. They don't have a balance of skill set. They're not going to help us accomplish our goal, but we're no longer alone, right? Because if we go launch our business and we're going to convince this to a person, we go have a sales activity, they say, never want to use you ever again, get out of here. Now we're like, I wish I just had someone I could console. And they were on my team with me and they're rowing the same boat with me. We're not going the right direction.
Blame them.
Blame them, right? Any number of things. So we go hire 5 people on our team so we can listen to them bellyache with us, right? They affirm our bad decisions and we affirm their bad decisions, right? But really what would happen is if we actually looked at it and said, is this a viable service that we're providing to our clients? They'll affirm us instead of getting 10 people to say the customers are all wrong. Right. And so I'll even break that down further. If you're getting the same answer from everyone, change what you're saying. Right. Don't go get people that affirm your wrong answer. Get people that'll challenge your wrong answer to make it an answer that is more appealing, right? Meaning is your sales effort and offering worth it to the clients and consistently, and then you get affirmation from the client instead of affirmation from the wrong team members. And that's a huge trap. Hiring people that'll affirm bad decisions. We don't want to create this echo chamber where we get the wrong ideas in the group and we just hire people that are yes men, essentially. We want to make sure we're delivering services from there as well.
Now, once you do have your team, right? Once you've done your due diligence, you have a team. It's rare where you can just wind them up and let them go.
For sure.
So what do you got to do to continue to facilitate their success?
So before they came in, they were working at another organization. So obviously we're in the security space, and amazingly, you may think there's only one way to provide security. Nope, there's a million opinions. You know what I mean? How do you provide security, right? Any number of ways that can be conducted. And quite frankly, let's just oversimplify that. I mean, there is a reason you have the Army, the Air Force, the Marines, the Navy, and ultimately Space Force, National Guard, Coast Guard. I can assure you that one commander in each of those 7 branches of military that I just gave you is going to give a different decision on how you're going to provide the nation's security, right? And so that doesn't include, any other 3-letter agency by the government, police, right? And even if you look at the police, between a local police, sheriff's office, and the state troopers, again, 3 different focuses and approaches. So if I say security,
Mhm.
and then I had those 20 different examples I just gave you, they're going to have 20 different trainings and mindsets. And I'm not even breaking down their role in that, right? There's
Right.
people in the Army that may have been a cook in the Army,
Mhm.
right? Or they're in transportation. They just get the vehicles
Mhm.
there versus the front lines. And so all of those are their perception. So if I just wind them up and let them go, they're going to go on what they've always gone on. And that may not be the direction I want,
Mhm.
right? And so ultimately that's our job, is to say, hey, you have particular skills and it came from your particular branch of service or your history.
Mhm.
And then here's how that aligns with us. So the first thing that I do, and again, these are super practical team development. I meet with every direct report I have every day the first week. Every day, because I want to make sure that I'm recalibrating right away. They
Mhm.
have a perception of the organization when they come in, they have experiences when they come in. I am first and foremost, first 90 days is all about alignment. I meet with them every day and I make sure we're aligned first philosophically, right? Are we aligned? The first week is philosophically. The first month, are we aligned practically? How are you going to practically apply your philosophy, right? Are you going to encourage people? Are you going to that? And then the next 2 months for the first 90 days procedurally. So philosophically, first we align the first week, because if we can't align philosophically the first week, that's only going to get further and further
Mhm.
apart, right? The second is practically. How are you going to put this in practice? How are you going to manage and lead your team? And the third is procedurally. What is the process you're going to do to deploy this? Many people assign a project. That's the problem, right? We're saying this is a project. Now, if we look back at ourselves, we apply that philosophy to every project. We apply our practice to every project, and we apply our process to every project. So we want a project. We're usually hiring people that I need this done. I'm going to go hire them.
Mhm.
But what happens is that project gets done, and then we realize, oh, they just did that project well. We never aligned philosophically. We never aligned practically, and we never aligned procedurally.
Uh-huh.
That is why when we're onboarding someone, we should align in those 3 areas, not assign a project, which is the first trap of onboarding somebody new.
So that sounds like a lot of work for you, for as a leader. You have to set up these meetings. You have to spend time. You have to schedule with make sure it aligns with their schedule, and you sit down and you're checking in all the time.
So we already have a pre-mapped schedule
Mhm.
that aligns with mine, right?
Mhm.
And so when we have a start date, I particularly set down the schedule and I work with my team and I say, here's the dates I need to have them. And then I have the first conversation. And so as with everything in life that leads to progress, you schedule your progress, right? You have a progress scheduled. And so I know day one, I get to know them. And I said, who are you? What's your history, right?
Mhm.
And these are super practical. Who are you? That's the first day. Second day, why are you here? Why did you decide to accept the position I offered you?
Mhm.
And then what are your plans for that role? What would you like to see in your life and career? And those are basic first week philosophical alignment questions. And so really look at that and saying, am I meeting with them each week? And then am I philosophically aligning them? And how do I best philosophically align with the new employee that I have there? And then ultimately that structure makes it super simple. And so the work is simplified when I have a structure that I follow every time,
Mhm.
right? And then procedurally, hey, what if you were to get a new project? I asked them this question. How would you handle it?
Mm.
I'm hearing their procedures,
Mhm.
right? One of the things I ask everybody their first week is saying, what's the most effective management style you've ever had? And who's the most effective manager you had and why? That's philosophically aligning. Can I align with being that manager for them to get the most effective? And what their answer is will tell me their philosophy. Well, I like someone that never checks in and only gives me a raise each and every year and without any accountability. Those are the best managers I've ever had. Okay, that does not philosophically align with me. I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to give you a purpose for your role. I'm going to challenge you to, have an impact. And if you don't, then we're going to have conversations on process to adjust. And so philosophically, do you align with performing in your role or do you align with, not having any accountability? Which one do you align with philosophically?
Now, would you say that hopefully those things are worked out in the interview process? Because if you've already hired them and then you realize, oh, they don't align, what do you do? And what are some other things you got to consider?
Yeah, so I think the interview process is a huge trap in many ways, right? Because I've never seen a resume that puts all their bad days on there. I was terrible this day. I lost the company this. And, I was fired these 3 jobs. No, they just put their tenure on there and they're always highlights, right? They're not lowlights. So we can easily be deceived. And quite frankly, I mean, there's a lot of resumes that are maybe a little bit more embellished. Led huge teams.
Sure,
Well, some people, 3 people is a huge
Yeah.
team, and some people, 10,000 people is a huge team,
Uh-huh.
right? So we got to correlate that and see where it's applicable there. Second, there's professional interviewers, right? Literally look at the people on the media. I went and this probably hopefully will offend some people, but
Hopefully.
see if I'm a provoker, But ultimately, I did an interview early on, and you guys can go look it up. I was literally 90 days into this role, and I was on Your World with Neil Cavuto. And it was this was after a particular security incident here in Omaha. I never worked in security my entire life.
You're the first one that picked up the phone, apparently.
But then I'm like, wow, these interviews have no idea. They're just professional interviews. They're actually clueless. They're literally reading a script. If the question is not either 1 in their ear or 2 read on a script, they have no idea. You don't even know what you just said. You're literally reading it or listening to it. And there are professional interviews that sit in a job and they don't believe what they said. They just interview well. And so we can be trapped, and then they become like, wow, that was a great interview. That person can be perfect for our organization. That's why we can't be enamored with the hiring process. The onboarding process is an extension of the hiring process, right? Because that's where we have to look at that. First, we can say, okay, are you really who you said you were in the interview? And we've all been trapped by that. I make hiring mistakes all the time. I'm just saying,
nobody in this room.
Nobody in this room, right? And so ultimately, then we see, what are they best suited for in the process, right?
Podcast, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wait, who should I hire as my host? Still in the evaluation period, Art. I know we're way deep in this process.
Slain, folks. Absolutely slain. All right. What else should leaders keep in mind as they develop teams?
Well, of course, then it's always make an adjustment, because I've learned this as teams go. There are people at certain stages in their lives and the organizational's lives. They're a great fit, but over time that may change, right? Whether that's their personal lives and circumstances change, right? They might go through, a marriage, a divorce, add kids to their lives, or whatever the case might be. Their financial situation may change. A husband may lose a job. A wife may lose a job. Any number of things. Those all affect. We are inherently the same person everywhere we go, right? Whether I'm working, whether I am, at home or anywhere in my lives that's there. And all of those 3 things can affect us, right? They may have, family health issues, extended family health issues going on as well. So be aware of that. So that can change. And they may not be able to travel the same amount or take on the same roles and responsibilities. So that's 1. Evaluate as things go. Number 2 is the organization grows. Right. So you may have someone at a perfect stage for the organization, but they grow, right? I've had early stage employees are like, I love doing a lot of different things. One of the things, we're at our stage in the organization, I need to hire people with specific experience and background in the area of expertise. So as opposed to hiring a generalist, which a small organization generally does, people that can really be your all-encompassing handyman. Handymen don't build a house. Let's use that analogy, right? They go fix a house,
right?
Or they have a smaller project. That's what a handyman does. But if I want to build a house, I got to go get a framer. I got to go get a roofer. I got to go get a plumber or an electrician, and that's their skill set. Now, if there's a plumbing problem, I don't ask the electrician to go solve the plumbing problem, right? That's just not their skill set. But in a small organization, our handyman can do both, right? And that's ultimately what we need to recognize is, hey, the organization outgrew their skill set, and I need a professional here, and that's okay. And we need to recognize that as a leader. But I really like this person. I really, enjoy them. And that can absolutely be the case, because I think as a leader, we have to separate the responsibility they're hired to do and the relationship we've developed with them. Because ultimately, an organization finally is judged by what it provides to the consumer, not the relationship the leader has with a person that isn't providing.
Right.
And so those are difficult conversations to have. But as a leader, we need to be willing and able to have those conversations. And so I always tell people, you're not a manager until you've fired somebody. I'm like, well, that seems really cold. But ultimately, why? Because now I've set a standard. And that's why you're a leader. Is a leader must set a standard.
That's a tough decision.
That's a tough decision.
And it's some people, I don't want to do that. I'm going to avoid that conflict.
And I will tell you, your organization will stagnate and decline because you will not set a standard. And that standard is defined by how you govern your decisions. It's not defined by what you say. It's how you manage your decisions. Because people will say, hey, here's your standard, and you don't abide by it, so I don't have to. But if here's my standard, and I know if I go to Reed and this is the standard he has, I know he does that every time, right? And so I'm going to be held to his standard as he says it and as he does it.
Well, and the rest of the team members see that.
Absolutely.
This person's not pulling their weight, and the leader's not doing anything about
That's
it.
right.
So I guess, why should I?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing, as a leader, is recognize that you are, one, communicating the standard, but you're also setting the standard. And if you're not setting the standard by having difficult conversations, the standard that you communicated is invalid. So some of the practical recommendations that I would have is we want to look for improvement over perfection, right? I mean, as we're developing a team.
No, say that again. Improvement.
Yeah, so I'm monitoring your improvement because I know you're not perfect, right? We'll do this. This would be fun and entertaining for at least me, right? So from you, Art, I'm looking for improvement, right? Not perfection, right? A little bit more nods and more laughing more robustly at my jokes. There you go. That's good improvement. That's it. Thanks. Yeah. So that's improvement. And then, really find ways to help them to learn and grow, right? And that is setting me up for better jokes. That's a way you can learn and grow, is you tee it up. Just be your natural self. It's a perfect setup.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
There you go.
Write this down.
Yeah, exactly. Write this down. We'll take some notes. We'll have that AI script doing that. And then ask and listen what they need. I think you need me to make fun of you more. And I've asked you that, and that's something you need. And I'm just coaching. I'm not bossing you around.
No.
All right. I'm not telling you what to do.
Yeah.
We have other producers that boss you around.
Sure.
I'm merely here as your coach. Yeah. Right. And so then I start with myself, right? I look at ways to set myself up. Then I'll look at ways for you to set me up. Right. So I start with myself. That's another practical thing to do. And then growth is incremental, right? We're 50 episodes into this, and you're incremental growth, right? You're getting a little bit better. And so I'm measuring that on the other side. That's really practical things that I'm applying in our context.
I'm learning so much from this podcast.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Well, I'm doing that. I'm developing you as a team member. That's what's happening here. So it's a real live practical application.
Well, unfortunately or fortunately, we've reached the end of our time together here in episode 13, Team Development. Very useful. Thank you, Reed, for sharing everything that you do. Thank you, listeners, for joining us. We have episode 14 coming up next, Project Management, also an important part of leadership. Know the steps, teach the steps. In the meantime, I'm Art Calderon. Stay purposeful.
And if you are someone that leads a team, you must, as the leader, develop that team. And the first thing that starts is selection. If you're a team leader and you're inclined to get people that affirm or listen or are just essentially yes men, look at your team. And first of all, look at the criteria with which you select a team. Second, when you have a team, make sure that you've set the standard and hold them to the standard, because you are held accountable as an organization or the leader to the objective, vision, strategic plan, and financial acumen that you have, not to the friends you have. Then, if you have them there, hold them accountable to that standard and develop them towards achieving, accelerating beyond that standard, right? Use those coaching techniques, identify their strengths, keep them in the areas of strengths, and then coach them around their weaknesses or hire to your weaknesses or their weaknesses. And as a result of that, the more that you adhere to that process, the more you work together, the stronger the team you have, and the more likely you are to achieve your vision. I look forward to seeing your progress as we continue on with our podcast.